We have the worst of all people in charge, the worst in our history, I would say, at a time when the world could hardly be more dangerous. A person might say the world is especially unpredictable at the moment. Maybe yes, maybe no. Perhaps it's only unpredictable if you haven't got a copy of the script, if you're not aware of the little men behind the curtain. There are Russian warships in the Bay of Havana in Cuba, 70 miles from Florida. Among the payloads aboard are Zircon hypersonic missiles capable of reaching the White House in minutes if a person had a mind to fire them that way. In the Ukraine, squat American ATACMS, Army tactical missile systems, ballistic weapons capable of hitting targets deep inside Russia. It's my opinion, just by the by, that Britain and America have been at war with Russia for a while now, not just using Ukraine as the proxy, but actually directly at war with Russia. What could possibly go wrong? The ghost of the Cuban Missile Crisis is back to haunt us with a vengeance. At precisely the moment when the nations of the West are run by, at the top of the pyramid of power, an apparently senile, elderly President of the United States of America, and below him, and dependent upon him, heaven help us all, a motley crew of underlings, like British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, flanked by his equally unedifying Foreign Secretary David Cameron, the same Cameron that had to be given a seat in the House of Lords before he could flounce onto the international stage once more, and who, while Prime Minister himself, was infamously dubbed Dodgy Dave by Labour MP Dennis Skinner. But anyway, an unelected minister in a government led by an unelected Prime Minister, furtively waging war on Russia without so much as a by your leave. The kindling is piled high, soaked in petrol, and the sparks are flying. And instead of any statesman with the wisdom to dampen down the risk of a global conflagration, we have designer-suited placemen, servile marionettes that move and speak subject to the commands of others, others we did not elect and over whom we have no influence whatsoever. Everyone expects that monumentally ineffectual miniature Sunak and his party will be sent packing in a few weeks' time. No doubt he'll simply hand the baton to his uni-party teammate, Sir Keir Starmer, who will simply pick up where Sunak left off, the same Sunak who was memorably forgotten a while back as Rashid Sunak by the aforementioned demented wreck of Joe Biden. Starmer will press on with the globalist agenda, only faster and harder than his immediate predecessor, whose seat he will keep warm with the other cheek of the same arse. While the missiles simmer in Havana, in Ukraine, we're invited to watch the pantomime of a general election, cheered on by those that either genuinely believe the general election will change anything, or else have so much personally at stake that they must appear to believe. For me, it's like watching the last days of the dinosaurs lurching and stumbling around while their successors, fast-moving and adaptable little mammals, move around in their shadows. Those mammals are misidentified by the mainstream media, willfully slandered indeed as dangerous right-wing extremists, when what they really are is the manifestation of what more and more ordinary, decent, regular people all over the world actually want, which is political parties that at least appear to be listening to their cries of anguish, their cries for help. Across the channel, there's French President Emmanuel Macron, another leader who appears as though viewed through the wrong end of a telescope, so badly whipped in the European elections that he has seen fit to call a snap election of his own. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz received a drubbing as well, but has ruled out an early plebiscite. In Belgium, the Prime Minister Alexander De Croo wept on live television as he tendered his own resignation following his own defeat. In all three cases, in France, Germany and Belgium, the damage to globalist liberal types was the consequence of pesky proles daring to vote for parties that globalists routinely label right-wing, if not far-right. Globalist puppets are flapping helplessly like the empty socks they are, Sunak, Macron, De Croo, exposed as the nothings they truly are, no more than factotums, willingly serving the needs of whomever is actually in charge and calling the shots. As I say, you can spot the up-and-coming contenders because they're vilified as little better than fascists and Nazis. Which brings me to the ceremony in the French village of Oradour-sur-Glane, attended by Macron and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, marking the 80th anniversary of the massacre there by SS Nazis of 643 villagers in a revenge attack in response to actions by the French resistance. I personally find the commemoration of such horrors by our present crop of so-called leaders especially hard to watch. I observe the bowing of heads in seeming reflection of terrible wrong, and then remember an actual SS Nazi veteran being given a standing ovation earlier this year in the Canadian Parliament in front of a clapping Justin Trudeau and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, fist raised in salute. I watch solemn remembrance at Oradour-sur-Glane and think about our own former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson proudly celebrating as heroes members of the Ukrainian Azov Brigade, an outfit formed in 2014 with the aim, according to its then leader, of ridding the world of Semite Untermensch. I watch all this and ask myself again, who won the Second World War? Were the Nazis the baddies or not? The world has not been more dangerous than it is now at any moment in any of our lifetimes. When the Cuban Missile Crisis unfolded in 1962, the US President John F. Kennedy was fully compos mentis, certainly able to make his own way to the restroom when required, and the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev could walk in a straight line unassisted by Nurse Ratched. I don't know if Sunak enjoys being at war with Russia, although it's hard to imagine any sane human being enjoying such a predicament. I don't know if Joe Biden even knows his country is at war with Russia. Vladimir Putin of Russia surely does know he's at war with the West, but so far has opted not to strike the match that ignites the fire that consumes us all. Having a general election in Britain right now would seem like throwing a swingers party in the fast lane of a motorway in the dark, which is to say, creating a tasteless and ill-advised distraction performed by a lot of people with their trousers down and their skirts up, just to end up with the same old, the other lump of the uniparty on steroids. On the face of it, it seems especially inappropriate for anyone, politically motivated or not, who has bothered to read The Room recently. As I already mentioned, all across Europe, the latest election results make plain that vast swathes of populations have finally been pushed beyond all endurance by their globalist would-be totalitarian overlords. Those globalists can squeak and squeal all they want about what they call the rise of the right, but the inescapable fact remains that after decades of being let down by politicians enthralled to one-world government fantasies, the regular people, the people so put upon by representatives of a uniparty bent on immiserating and then controlling every aspect of their lives, have turned to listen to those with something else to say. Welcome stuff about family, freedom, secure borders, national and local identity. The globalists have been thrown into a complete panic, increasingly a meltdown, confronted by more and more people who see them for what they are, essentially as the members of an international crime syndicate that needs forever war to survive. The dinosaurs, the old guard, have sought to silence, to ridicule, to criminalise, to vilify, and most recently to shut in their homes or to force to line up and receive unsafe and ineffective medical products. More and more common sense people who just want rid of them once and for all. Back in 2016, there were two moments when the people, the bullied, disregarded people who'd finally had enough of being either ignored or just treated with contempt by their leaders, did something those leaders weren't expecting. On one side of the Atlantic, the much-maligned so-called deplorables punched a hole in their basket and voted Donald Trump into the White House. On the other side of the same ocean, a whole other coming together of people who were supposed to sit quietly in their box voted for Brexit to take Britain out of the European Union. And after that, on account of that, well, we've had what we've had. A scamdemic, a hoax climate crisis, war in Ukraine that bears all the hallmarks of being enough to metastasise into nuclear Armageddon. How psychopathic would a bunch of losers have to be that rather than accept their jig is up, that the game is over, they would rather drag us all into the abyss with them? How ironic, amid all the talk of democracy, up to and including the lying claptrap about the war in Ukraine being about defending democracy in a country where there is none, that it was actual manifestations and products of actual democracy, Trump in the White House and Brexit for Britain, that made the totalitarians drop their masks and reveal themselves for what they are, the enemies of democracy, and to effectively declare that silly old troublesome democracy was not for the likes of you and me anyway, and that it had to be burned down and replaced with the advent of digital serfdom. Here's the thing, I say again that the world has never been more dangerous than right now, largely on account of our being cursed with so-called leaders of absolutely the lowest calibre, kakistocrats all. For whatever reason, we have the worst of men and women at the worst of times. And so it's no coincidence that it's right now that people all over the world are rejecting the choice that is no choice. All across Europe and in the United States as well, the corrupted old guard and their lackeys in the mainstream media and elsewhere would actually have us believe it really is their way or the highway. Here, they don't want you looking at anyone but them being the last of the Conservatives and the Labour Party that hates workers. In the US, the red and blue try to pretend that other candidates of other parties simply don't exist. On both sides of the Atlantic, the incumbents behave like toddlers who believe that if they close their eyes, the thing that scares them disappears. Just vote for one of us, they still say. In blue shirts or red shirts, it makes no difference. And under absolutely no circumstances dare to contemplate those awful fascists and Nazis over there with their dangerous talk of freedom, rights and democracy. Anyway, they say, if it's Nazis you want, then offer your support and money to these proper, good old-fashioned Nazis we have over here, the ones that helped us win the Second World War against the Russians. And if that makes no sense to you, if you know the truth is literally the opposite of what we're being told, then it's because you, like so many around the world now, have woken up to recognise the truth and to remember who the bad guys actually are.